It's now 6 o'clock, and I call this regularly scheduled council meeting to order. For our invocation this evening, I would ask that we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. If you'll please rise, Ms. Thompson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is our consent agenda. Is there any part of the consent agenda any council person wishes to remove?
Yes, we'd like to take off the first 8 bullets of B.
Okay. Is there a motion related to the remaining items?
I move that we accept the consent agenda except for the 8 items we've removed. A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We'll now discuss the 8 items related to the empowerment zone.
Mayor, Council, as y'all are aware, we have a neighborhood empowerment zone that was designated on the eastern portion of town. And this provides opportunities for developers that are looking to invest in our community. It provides some incentive and some options for them, usually regarding property tax abatements, whether it's owner-occupied or rental, or different standards, and then waiving of permit fees and some of the other costs associated with development. And so this gentleman has 8 different properties within the zone that he's looking to develop, and so he's submitted a request for the exemptions that are available during that empowerment zone. And as we were looking over these and talking with our attorney, he had some thoughts that I hadn't considered, and so we wanted an opportunity to kind of put that in front of the council and get y'all's feedback.
Mayor and council, on the 8 agreements, the 8 agreements as presented are standard city agreements. They're all the same. There are blanks, and the city has the ability to require different things. In particular, I would call your attention to Section 3.3 of each agreement. And under B, alternative off-street parking requirements shall be, and it's left blank, you could require in that particular instance that the driveways that may be placed on the property would be made of concrete as opposed to gravel or anything else. So that's one thing for the council to consider. And the second thing is in Section 3.4. Section 3.4 of each agreement deals with alternative materials and methodologies, and it says alternative construction methodologies and alternative building materials are authorized as follows, and you could require in that section that the exterior of the dwellings in each case would be masonry to a certain percentage, and that would be a requirement. And again, while you are not able to require that as a normal thing in zoning anymore under our new state laws, because this is an agreement, because it is a condition of getting tax abatements here, the council does have that power to put that in the agreement if the council deems that to be in the interest of the city of Commerce.
And so the thought for me is that when state law changed and removed our ability to regulate building materials, I just assumed that took it off the table everywhere. But because of how these agreements are processed, we can negotiate those building materials in exchange for the abatements. And so we wanted y'all's discussion and input before we proceeded on.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. What's the council's thoughts?
I personally would like to see that there be some requirements, especially with the driveway and the building material. not necessarily saying, that it needs to be brick, but the masonry products, I think is a wise move to make. Otherwise, if I'm correct, they could be metal,
Any material that's allowed under building codes.
right?
Other comments? And I would assume that if the builder did not agree, if we were to enforce this, if they did not accept the incentive, they could do whatever they wanted to?
I believe so. John, this guy has given us a couple of examples of the types of homes that he's looking to build. I can't remember, did it already include some kind of masonry facade anyway in what he's submitted? Parts of siding?
And I haven't seen one recently that's did not have a concrete driveway or off-street parking.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be allowed.
Well, we can definitely take this back to him and negotiate that.
Okay.
But if that is a standard we want to hold firm on, we can do so, and then he can decide whether he wants to proceed or not.
I think typically, wasn't it 80/20?
John, do you know what our
80/20
standard was?
Yeah, I believe it was 80%.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Everybody know what you're voting on?
1 second. Now we make a motion with the changes.
Yeah.
Yes, I move that we require the masonry, the 80/20, and concrete driveway.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Item 5, presentation to City Council by members of the public according to the rules stated in the agenda. I have no cards. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to the council? If not, we'll move to item 6, consideration of appointment by the City Council of Mayor Pro Tem for May 2021, May 2022. We need to decide among us who will be Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a nomination?
I would like to nominate
If-
Tony Henry.
Sir?
If I could, this is also an item on the executive session, and because this is a post that does have some power, the council could decide to talk about this in executive session and then come back out and vote. So if you wanted to have an executive session discussion, you could. It's not required.
Would make the
Back
the
to where we were.
nomination. Thank you. We're going to nominate Tony Henry for Mayor Pro Tem.
I second.
Are there other nominations? If not, I will move that the nominations cease and we elect Tony Henry Mayor Pro Tem by acclamation.
All right.
Everyone agree?
Yes.
Okay. Item 7, we now need to consider appointment by the City Council of an ex officio to the Commerce Economic Development Corporation. Are there nominations?
I make the motion that we nominate Becky Thompson for that position.
I'll second.
Are there other nominations? If not, we'll declare the nomination cease and we elect Becky Thompson by acclamation.
All right.
Gosh, we're agreeable. All right, item 8, consideration of appointment by the City Council of an ex officio member to the Beautification Commission.
Mayor, I would like to nominate Stephanie Muller for the Beautification Commission.
I'll second.
Other nominations? If not, I'll declare the nomination cease and we elect Stephanie by acclamation. Okay. Item 9, hotel occupancy tax allocation presentations.
I was hoping somebody else would be here first to adjust this, because last time I dropped it.
I apologize, that was me.
Thank you, Howdy. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Before we get into our presentations for the hotel allocation, I just wanted to touch base on the amount of revenue we're budgeting for next year. Initially, we had anticipated maybe 15,000 for next year, but looking at the trend and seeing what happened while COVID was in full force, we still received about 20,000, so we're going to increase our budgeted revenue to 20,000 for next year. So as you're hearing everybody's requests and thinking about what your allocations want to be, just keep in mind that we're expecting 20,000 in revenue. And I will also state that this is just a presentation, that this is not where you're actually going to allocate. We can allocate that next month or anytime before budget. So just to keep that in mind. And then for our presenters, I just kind of want to touch base on the two-step process. So in order to qualify for hotel funds, you have to, 1, put heads in beds, and 2, it has to go, I think it's 6 or 9 categories that they have to be used towards. I believe everybody, all of our presenters received that article that's put out by TML, and I believe you guys have it as well. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I think we'll start with the Children's Museum, since they were the first to submit. Are they here? No. Okay. Never mind. Howdy, do you want to do the chamber for us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Paul Voss couldn't be here tonight. He is actually going through a medical procedure right now. He's okay, but he was not going to be able to be here tonight. And so he sent an email and asked me to present this to the council. He says, "I'm sorry that I cannot be there tonight to represent the chamber at the hotel tax workshop. I have treatments at Southwest Medical Center, and I cannot miss the second of these series of 25 treatments. The chamber has been participating with the City of Commerce in the designation of funding from the hotel tax money for quite a few years now. We have had our ups and downs and intense discussions as to the qualifications as well as to the intentions of the state legislator to these monies. As you might remember, last year, in an effort to help the city, we thought it best to ask for only $1,000 instead of our normal share of this money. This was in the mid-COVID era, and we thought it best to try and help the city with this funding. The City of Commerce has stepped up and is going to help us with some of our events this year, and that help is much appreciated. Thanks to Howdy and his team for this help, especially for the 4th of July celebration. As you know, we meet 5 of the 7 criteria. It's actually 9 criteria, but as we meet 5 of the 9 criteria put in the rules for the hotel tax money. The chamber keeps and offers only the one and only full-time visitor center in Commerce. We are constantly doing advertising for events in Commerce and about Commerce. The chamber promotes the arts in Commerce with our musical shows and stage events, as well as participate in fine art shows and crafts with our events. At the chamber office, we also have historical displays about Commerce with a gallery of old photographs and historical items for the public to see. The chamber offers signage for our out-of-town visitors as to where events take place, and promoting these events and promoting business within our community in the historic areas in which they can shop and dine. Now that a lot of the restrictions have been lifted from the COVID pandemic, we are looking forward to getting our event schedules up and running again in our community and get us out and living our lives in beautiful East Texas. You may have noticed that we had a downtown car show on May 1st and drew a large crowd to coincide with our day to vote. Last Friday, we had the new event called Spring Bodark Golf Tournament at the Sandhills Country Club here in Commerce. We had a great attendance and great advertisement for our city and our local business sponsors. July 3rd, we will be having our Independence Day celebration at Heritage Park which will be simulcast on KETR and co-sponsored by the City of Commerce, Commerce Chevrolet Buick, and the Chamber, among others. September brings the Fall Bodark Golf Tournament and the 35th Bodark Bash on September 24th and 25th. First weekend in October, we will assist Commerce Police Department in the National Night Out. And the last day of October, we will have Halloween on the square. November, we will be adding our business to the Small Business Saturday. And on December 4th will be our Christmas parade and Santa on the square. We have already scheduled band performances and impromptu concerts on the square and around town to bring music from country, jazz, pop, rock, and soul. There are also numerous events that the Chamber co-sponsors. We bring people to Commerce and people who stay locally in our hotels and shop here. We are about commerce and we support the city in every way. I don't know how much hotel tax the city plans this year. However, we could use and will use the funds as mandated by the legislature. We ask for $6,000 as our share of the hotel funds for this year and look forward to having a great year getting the city and our community back in swing. Thank you, Paul Voss, Executive Director, Chamber of Commerce.
So I will say that prior to this, his application did state 10,000. So as you're seeing a discrepancy, turns out they're only asking for 6. So I can make that adjustment.
Are there other presentations?
Tim McMurray was planning to participate on behalf of the university and their request. He is a flight, I believe, to Florida, and the flight was supposed to have landed at 6, but he reached out to us a little bit earlier this afternoon, and a schedule change. His plane is not going to land until 7. There's still the possibility that he will Zoom in and be able to speak to us remotely maybe later, but there's no telling what will happen with the plane and that schedule and the rest of our meeting. So he did send in an email with a couple of points that the university still continued to host a tremendous number of events even during the pandemic, but football didn't host a home schedule this past year. Hosting the NCAA softball regional this weekend, one of only 8 in the entire country, and that has brought numerous rooms to Magnuson this weekend with an entire team and fans and others. He says, although not tied directly to hotel tax, our Football Leadership Council and other student athlete leaders have done multiple beautification projects in and around downtown. They spent 4 days handing out bottled water to the community during the ice storm, and they continue to engage with Commerce ISD on reading and staying in school initiatives. And so they're asking for your consideration in their funding request as well.
Okay, we will be welcoming other presentations if they show up this evening while we're meeting. Let's move on to item 10, discussion and possible action on establishing the incorporation of the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction into the proposed boundaries of an emergency service district, ESD, within Hunt County.
Mayor, Council, this is Howdy Lisenby, City Manager. As many of y'all are aware, there has been an ongoing effort in Hunt County to form an emergency services district that would encompass the majority of Hunt County. It does require an election for that district to be formed and created, and the areas that are within the boundaries of that district are subject to an additional property tax not to exceed 10 cents for the financing of those efforts. This effort predated me in joining the city here and living in Hunt County, but in some of my previous jobs I have been involved in and have sat on boards for emergency services districts, so I understand what they're going for. If you have questions, Chief may have better answers, but I believe the goal is to provide funding for the volunteer fire departments and the small rural departments that exist within Hunt County that are significantly underfunded for these areas that are growing in population. The request that has been presented to the City of Commerce is they're actually asking that we opt out of the services district for within our city limits. But the question is, do we want to opt out the ETJ or the area 1 mile outside of our city limits as well? If we were to opt into the district, they would be required to provide some funding to our fire department, but that would take away funding from these small rural departments that they're actually trying to assist. So they're requesting that Commerce opt out of the district. So what we have to decide is, one, are we formally going to opt out of the district, and whether we want to also opt out our extraterritorial jurisdiction. Staff recommendation is that we opt out the ETJ as well, because in the future, if we annex or we have development agreements that move our city limits and the ETJ is part of the district, then it starts creating confusion about who has response and funding. And so it's, in our view, is just a little cleaner if we keep the city and our ETJ out of the boundaries of the ESD district. So that's our recommendation.
Questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we opt out.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 11, discussion and possible action on the approval of a memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the City of Commerce and the Boys and Girls Clubs of America.
Mayor, Council, this is Howdy Lisenby, City Manager. As y'all are aware, we've had a number of conversations since I joined the team here about various departments and services that we provide to our community and our need to improve and raise the level of service that we do provide. For a number of years, the City of Commerce has operated both the youth sports facilities, and they have administered the leagues that allow the kids to play the various different sports. I can't speak directly to how we've been doing over those past couple of years because I haven't been here, but I'm somewhat of a data nerd, and so if I look at the numbers, we have consistently been in decline over the past 5 years in terms of registrations and participation by the kids in our youth sports. And we've reached the point where we're actually losing money on these programs, and it has to be subsidized by the general fund. I had made a commitment to the council shortly after I got here that this would be one of the areas that we were going to work to turn around and improve the level of service. And as we've discussed, our approach was kind of a slow grow philosophy, that adding Ricky Brown to our team, we were going to slowly begin to focus on a couple of core sports and get really good at those, and then start layering in additional sports opportunities. Through the course of these conversations, we became connected with Miss Jenny and Daria with the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Texas, and many of you may be aware of Boys and Girls Club and the programs they offer across the nation. This particular club already has a great presence in our community at all 4 of our school campuses. They're an organization that is highly respected and have a good deal of corporate oversight. One of the challenges with, if you will, outsourcing the administration of youth sports leagues is found in who is the organization that's going to run the leagues. In many communities, they're parent-led organizations, and parent-led organizations have the potential to be phenomenal. My experience is they all start great and they end in fiery crashes because you have a very motivated group of parents this year, and they form an organization and they put some structure together and they have some transparency and some accountability, and everything goes great for 4 or 5 years, and then their kids age out of the program and they move on, and the second generation of parents kind of start taking leadership, and you have a drop, and then a couple of years after that their kids will age out, and you have another round of parents that come in to assume leadership, and over time the quality of leagues begins to deteriorate because they don't have a succession plan to make sure the programs are run well. partnering with an organization like the Boys and Girls Club, I think, answers that concern with outsourcing the administration of leagues. And so we've had a series of conversations between Jenny and her team and myself and Ricky about what it would look like for us to partner with the Boys and Girls Club so that the city could focus our time and our resources on the facilities that are used to play these sports, and allow Jenny and her team to actually do the administration of the leagues and the resources that they potentially bring to the conversation. So I don't want to steal all of Jenny's thunder, but Boys and Girls Club has access to some national funding organizations. They have some corporate sponsorships. They have some options that we as a local city don't have access to that could improve the level of service. They also have an agreement with Texas A&M University Commerce for student workers to assist in their programs, and those student workers are paid by the university to help run the Boys and Girls Club programs, which could be used to help staff our youth sports and our recreation programs. And that tends to be one of our challenges as the city runs these leagues, is finding volunteers and finding people to help coach and help referee and help do umpiring and all the various things that it takes to make a league successful. And so we feel like it is an opportunity to greatly accelerate how we can improve the youth recreation programs that we offer. The final two pieces that I'll touch base with on this memorandum is Jenny's corporate board and their oversight are in agreement with the program, but as most organizations have seen some impact from COVID, they have some limited funding right now, and so they want to be cautious to not take on a new program that is going to lose money. And so what we have offered to do is put up to $10,000 on the table. I believe the last couple of years that we've run sports leagues, the city's general fund has had to subsidize recreation sports to the tune of $10,000. And so in this first year of getting the leagues up and running, there's the potential for the leagues to not make money. And so we wanted to backstop that and kind of reduce the risk for the Boys and Girls Club. And so the idea would be they operate for a season, and if their revenues and registrations exceed their expenses, then the city's not out anything. But if they bring in $60,000 and they expend $65,000 and they're going to have a $5,000 loss, then at that point the city would cut a check for $5,000 to cover the loss for that first year, to just help them ramp up and move into this. It's what we've been spending anyway, and so our point of view is that with this little bit of investment, we gain access to a much deeper bench of volunteers and people to help us run these programs. Finally, in conversation with Charles and even some of the attorneys for the Boys and Girls Club, there are still some questions about liability and insurance and indemnification. Those issues are going to require a more formal contractual agreement between the two parties. So what you have tonight is a memorandum of understanding so that both parties can commit to pursuing this partnership and moving things forward for some leagues we have coming up in front of us. And then we would follow that up with a more formal contract that their attorneys and our attorneys have lawyered up on and that we're all comfortable with. And so staff is recommending approval of the memorandum of understanding, but I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Jenny to see if she has anything that she wants to add, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. It is a privilege to be considered as a partner to serve the kids and the community in this way. It has been a very thoughtful process that we have been through in order to come up with this memorandum of understanding. And I think the thing that touches me the most is how aligned our values are as far as our organization and what we want to do for communities and kids and the city and what you are trying to accomplish for this community and the kids. And I think that that alignment of values is one of the most important things to be in place when you move into a partnership like this. And it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Howdy throughout this process. I believe the Boys and Girls Club, through, as Howdy mentioned, our national resources that we can leverage, like through our national brand and our national kind of partnerships, as well as our footprint here in Northeast Texas that spreads from Commerce to Greenville to Lone Oak to Rockwall. We have clubs in all those areas, as well as the local partnerships that we have with the school district and the university. Because of all of those factors, I think that we are perfectly positioned to be able to help make a difference and take these programs where the city wants to go. So again, just thank you for the opportunity. And I'm mostly, Howdy covered it. I'm mostly here just to answer questions that you may have about the agreement or us as an organization. I do want to introduce Daria. She is, so she and Ricky interned simultaneously so Daria came on as an intern for the Boys and Girls Club at the same time that Ricky came on as an intern for the city, and they've been working very closely together, and a lot of the ideas around this partnership were born from the work that Daria and Ricky were doing together. And as soon as we or if the council chooses to make this this agreement official, Daria will be the rock star that will take this and move it forward, and we're really excited about that. And with that comes a relationship with the Sports and Recreation Management Department at the university as well. And the one other thing I did want to mention that it wasn't really a part of our original discussions, but it's kind of like come out of this, and we're super excited about it, is we think there's an opportunity for workforce development with high school students here. That's one of the things that Boys and Girls Club does as part of our after-school programs for kids. And we have found some curriculum that we have access to where we can train teenagers to be officials for sports, and then potentially help plug them in to the workforce, through this partnership. And so that's something that an idea that's not fully fleshed out right now, but we're really excited about the potential of making that happen as well. And I think there are going to be some really cool connections that we can make between that after-school program and what's happening in the sports, just as far as giving kids that might not have exposure to the sports some exposure, and then they might be more likely to register, and recruitment and different things like that. So again, I just am here to answer questions if you have any.
Jenny, have you or any of those within this area ever done anything like this?
So when I first, yes, I have been a part of Boys and Girls Club organizations over the course of my career that have run sports programs. So that in different shapes, forms, and sizes. I have experience with that. And then we also have a lot of team members that have experiences participating in the planning and implementation of sports programs as well. And then we have an incredible network of Boys and Girls Clubs across the nation that we can benchmark with and learn from and form cohorts with as well.
I know that there's still quite a bit that has to be ironed out and worked out, but if there's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
it's still going to be looked at as a City of Commerce or the Commerce team. Who handles the calls that you get from parents and coaches and those type things? Will that be the Boys and Girls Club? Where does the city?
That'll be Mayor Williams, won't it? I think that Ricky and Daria will be able to work together to field those things. Daria is in the position to be responsible for the program in that way. And I'll let you speak to this as well. But Ricky, with the work he's been doing over the past semester, already has some established relationships with parents and things like that. And so I see there being a sharing of that responsibility.
I definitely think it would be a collaboration, and it also would depend on the nature of the issue. I'll take baseball as an example since we're currently in a baseball season. We participate in Dixie League. And if y'all recall, we adopted a child protection plan as part of Dixie League. And so if the nature of the complaint is about how a coach or a parent is behaving or something that a child is experiencing, the Dixie League rules dictate how you're going to handle that. And so whoever's running the league would kind of take the lead in that follow-up investigation. In this relationship, Boys and Girls Club would be running the league.
Right.
And so we would partner with them, but they would take the lead role. If the question was about the facilities and whether first base pops up every time someone runs across it, well, then clearly the city's going to take the lead, but it's
Right.
still collaborating with the Boys and Girls Club. So we would tackle them together, just depending on the nature of the issue, who takes the lead and who's in support. I would also add that this relationship does not preclude parents from getting involved in the leagues of their kids. They'll still have to pass a background test, and one of the things we've talked about in this partnership is developing kind of a coach's training. If you're going to coach the kids of our community, you need to come and sit down with us and have a conversation about character, about how to develop character in these kids. And so it may take a couple of seasons for parents to buy into that because they may not want to go to another meeting. But we feel very strongly about protecting our kids, and we feel very strongly about the character that our kids develop. And these coaches are instrumental in that process. And Jenny and her team already has access to curriculum and programs. They do this already. It's in their wheelhouse. It's what they're good at.
Yeah.
And I really like that option that it brings to us.
So if we agree to the MOU tonight, what's the first sport? What's the actions, and how quickly are you going to be engaged?
So what we've been talking about is implementing some summer mini camps, some skills camps, just to kind of create some excitement around the program and to promote the new partnership and what we have to offer. And we've been engaging the university athletic department in sort of kind of the initial planning conversations of that. So that would be the first thing that we would make available for kids to participate in. They would potentially, we're looking at those happening in mid to late July, and so that we could possibly even use the July 4th city celebration as a way to help kind of promote those camps and the partnership and the things that we've got going.
So we're exploring 3 skills camps this summer for soccer, for basketball, and baseball/softball. And so we're working with the university to flesh out some of those ideas. I believe soccer would be the next season that we would move into after baseball wraps up.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
Now, this will be localized. When you look at skills camps, are we looking at doing everything here, or are we talking about, I noticed you said you cover an area. And I've worked with the Boys and Girls Club before. I was one of the best football coaches 25 years ago.
Awesome.
And it's a good program to work with. But when you do skills camps and you have some of the kids that can't afford to go, and are you going to do a lot of those skills camps right here?
Absolutely. So this would all, I mean, the conversations that we've been having, this would all be happening here in Commerce, and either at city facilities or university facilities. We've even been kind of talking about a model where the first 3 days of the skill camp happens at a city facility, and then on the last day of camp, you get to go to a university facility for some sort of a game or a demonstration or something of that sort. So it would be all here and local. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that one of the goals of the partnership, well, I'm going to back up a little bit. One of the things that is important to Boys and Girls Club from a mission standpoint is that we make ourselves available to any and every kid that may need us. And we don't want there to be any barriers to entry. And keeping fees low is a really big part of that. That's why we seek the corporate partners and the grant sponsorships and, do fundraising around our programs and things like that, is so that we can keep fees as low as possible. And so one of our goals in forming this partnership was to make sure that that fees do not cause a barrier to entry. So we're hoping over time to be able to reduce fees. Can't guarantee that year one right out of the gate, but over time, as we leverage resources and build the partnership, we can reduce fees. But then we also, just as an organization, philosophically work with any parent who, is struggling with access. Yes, sir.
Schedule.
Yes.
Sports schedule. Will they all be here?
Absolutely.
So all the games will be teams, the center squads here?
Well, and it's like what we're doing with baseball right now is that I think we have a number of teams here just within Commerce, but because we participate in Dixie League, then we can play against kids in Cooper or in Campbell. And so there will be some travel games, like, for example, in baseball. Once we get into soccer, if we have enough teams so that we can run a full season and never leave town, we will. But sometimes there's some added fun in playing Cooper or playing other little teams, and then also hosting tournaments. But this partnership is going to focus solely on youth recreation sports in Commerce and making those leagues successful. If our leagues can play against other leagues in a season, we will pursue that. But we want to make sure our leagues are successful.
And I just wanted to mention that that although we have clubs in multiple communities, each community has a local board that supports that community, and we have processes and financial reporting in place to ensure that all funds that are contributed toward Commerce activities are spent in Commerce for Commerce kids. All right.
One question I have, you said that in the last few years that we've had to supplement from the general fund for this. There's a lot of expenses other than just the uniforms and getting those to the kids. There's the field maintenance and that amount of money that it costs the city. Is all of the funds, once they begin to make money, does it stay with them? Does it come back to help us with our funding? Because I would assume that the fertilizer, the mowing, and all that is substantial.
Our parks facility lives in the general fund.
Okay.
The recreation leagues actually lives in a completely separate recreation fund.
Oh, okay, so that is.
And so the dollars that come in and the dollars that go out in recreation don't touch the actual fields and facilities. That's run out of our parks budget. And so they've never supported each other.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. The MOU is for how long?
Well, the draft is, I think, for 4 years. One of the things that we would do is we'd probably ask for like a 2-year agreement with the option to 2-year renew, but it still gets us to 4 years.
Okay.
But the MOU could also be a very short term until we get the more formal agreement on the table as well.
Okay. And Daria, how long is your internship? Okay. So she's staying in the program with us, or
Yes,
what?
ma'am. So we're going to bring her on as a full-time Boys and Girls Club staff member. Her internship ended at the end of April, and she graduated in May.
Well, great. Thank you, because that was one of my concerns. Y'all were talking about parents going through, and here we are having 2 interns.
Ricky's
and
no longer
what
an
we were
intern.
wanting to do from there. So-
He is full-time on staff. He is a formal full-time employee of ours.
Fantastic. So we have you 2 to keep going with us. then.
Mhm.
All right.
And I think that if I remember correctly, what we proposed in the MOU was 3 years. But there's a 30-day, there's a clause that says with 30 days notice, either party, can leave the the agreement. And I can say that my corporate board was comfortable, with that. I think we all want to partner and make this work, but we all are unsure about. We want to make sure we're not overcommitting ourselves. What we have talked a lot about the fact that it takes a good 2 or 3 years to really build and establish a program. So we want to have the goal of giving it the time that it needs.
Other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
I now must explain why I can't vote on this. I not only am the president of the local Boys and Girls Club board, I also serve on the corporate board that oversees the entire organization. So this is your decision. And is there a motion related to it?
Did we have the MOU in our packet? I don't remember seeing it.
It was supposed to have been attached, but we've actually bounced back and forth and made a couple of changes as of today. And so
I would personally like to table this.
Okay.
Till we can see a lot of information, great organization, not questioning that, but just kind of go through some of the logistics and see if they're kind of kick it around in my mind a little bit.
well, and we can probably have the formal agreement in front of you in time for next meeting.
Is it a motion?
It's motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you for that discussion, and thank you, Jenny. Item 12, discussion and possible action on award of a professional service agreement for engineering services related to the 2021-2022 street and drainage improvements project.
Mayor, Council, this is Howdy Lisenby, City Manager. We have approximately $1.5 million right now set aside for street projects, and we're looking to add $1 million to that within the next year for a total of about $2.5 million in funding for street projects. And within the state of Texas, if you're going to take on a public work, I think it's over $25,000, Alan, you have to have an engineer on board. And so we felt confident that our public safety director, Bassam, could probably design a street for us. But state law would require that it be an engineer. And so we passed on Chief's office, his offer to design some streets for us. And we went through a request for qualifications process that state law outlines for selecting professional engineers. We had 3 firms that submitted, Friesen Nichols, Hayter Engineering, and then KSA, and those 3 firms were evaluated based on qualifications. And staff is recommending Friesen Nichols as the firm that we felt was the most qualified to tackle this. And so what you have in front of you today is kind of a phase 1, if you will. It's a professional services agreement between the city and Friesen Nichols. And the intent of this scope is to not go reinvent the wheel. There's been a number of studies that the city has done over the past years to evaluate our streets, to kind of get a sense of where are the problems. CliffsNotes version is they're everywhere, and then come up with a plan of attack. And so we've got a number of options in front of us that we need to evaluate and prioritize, because if we're going to spend $2.5 million, it needs to be part of a plan. And so this scope of work would allow Friesen Nichols and their team to work beside us, to look at the plans that have already been done, kind of create a short list of projects that we will bring back to you into the community for a very transparent ranking and prioritization process so that we can identify what is our first street project going to be, and then what order and how do we need to tackle the streets that come shortly after that. And so this contract is actually less than $50,000, which is the threshold. But this is a big deal for our community, and it's a high priority for the council. And so we wanted to bring it before you and see if y'all had questions. Alan is here with Friesen Nichols if you have questions for him and his firm. And but it's a little over $25,000 is the cost of this agreement, and the deliverable would be we come back with a list. We've ranked and prioritized those, and we have strong recommendations for what our first 1 or 2 street projects would be. After that, then we would do a subsequent agreement with Friesen Nichols for the design and construction of those street projects. With that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Alan, do you have anything to offer?
I'll raise the microphone back up over here. We're just happy to be out here and be able to help. Glad to connect back with Howdy, and just glad to come out and look at your streets. I got here a little bit early tonight. I was telling Howdy, so I got a kind of an advanced look. So we're just glad to be here and ready to help.
If you'd been here a little earlier, you'd have seen some of our challenges. That rain. It is amazing.
I understand. My background, I worked for the city of Dallas for 27 years, working on the city of Dallas street. So got a lot of history with streets. And one of my colleagues also worked for the city of Dallas on the engineering side and then on the street maintenance side, and he's also at Friesen Nichols. So got a lot of experience on streets coming to help.
Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Any questions or a motion?
I move that we accept the PSA with Friesen Nichols.
Second.
Who wins on that?
I did.
You did? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 13, first reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending Chapter 38, Article 4, titled Noise. Chris Batchel. Speaking of noise.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This ordinance before you amends Chapter 38 of the Noise Ordinance. I believe you have a copy of the old ordinance and the new ordinance. The old ordinance was very vague. It was very short. And what this does is it basically said that a reasonable person went out when we got a complaint for noise, and that reasonable person decided whether it was too loud. The ordinance, Chapter 38-87, kind of gets a little more lengthy. It gets into things like record players and different things like that. What it didn't do in this ordinance was give a daytime or nighttime ordinance. It basically said that we can't do anything until after 11 p.m. We had no teeth. And we had a number of people I'm sure some of y'all have experienced it, that push that right to the limit. So what this amendment does is it gives a noise level, and we went to other cities and read over their ordinances, and that's how we established these levels. We also went out and got some testing equipment that officers will carry with them in their patrol car, and it's basically a really fancy microphone. And so this amendment sets those daytime and nighttime limits of what's acceptable. We didn't take out the reasonable person because it still takes a reasonable person. You know, there's some variance in there. If we don't have a complaint or we have somebody that constantly complains, that reasonable person has to read that meter. But it sets those limits and parameters of what's accepted and what's not. It also sets the time frame so that if we have somebody working from home and there's a constant, there's actually, construction might be a bad example, but there's a constant jackhammer running outside their window and they can't work. It sets that limit of, this falls within that threshold so they can do it. It gives that officer more clear-cut direction when he goes out there. To kind of put it in perspective of what these noise levels read, if you're in your house and we pull up with a siren and we're outside and leave that turned on, that's about 70 decibels inside your house, based off of our testing material. So this is not, when you read it and those levels look low, it's not something that you have to tiptoe around your house and be really quiet. It basically gets into, from property line to property line, if your neighbor's got 10 speakers set up, it's going to violate those. If he's on his back porch with a little small record player, it's not going to exceed that threshold. But that's where the reasonable person comes in.
I'm sorry, Chris, what did you say the threshold was?
So the daytime and nighttime actually differ. On section 38-87, the nighttime is going to be 49 decibels, and then the daytime, let's see, 56. So a siren outside your house with you inside is about 70. That's with me with just as loud as I can get it. So it's not an unreasonable level, and it coincides with most other cities that we found around that have these ordinances.
I hate to ask, but how loud are dogs?
So I don't know. As we were doing the testing, me and Clay went out and we tested a number of things. We never got a dog that was close enough to give us an accurate measurement. He would have to be right by your window, really barking it up to get near these levels. I'm sure that there's some of them can get there, but it's not. If he's over the fence and all that, he's probably not going to hit this level unless he's just sitting there howling constantly. But if there's any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Got one, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is for residential properties or residential areas, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about just residential? Not. I'm thinking this is if somebody's riding down the road, got the music turned up, you can pull them over and you can give that too. Okay. What about the badge?
The what?
What about an event that we're having?
So in there is a section, and I wished I'd have memorized it better for you, but we left a clause in there that basically says Howdy or his designee can approve that. So if you went out and were having a blood drive and a party, for the blood drive, all it is a simple letter. If he designates me, that's fine. If not, he simply sends an email and says on September the 3rd, we're going to have this and this, and they can, I told him the other day, it kind of puts the monkey back on him and makes him the bad guy instead of me. So but it's in there.
So I told them that as long as the fundraiser was a blues festival, I would give them 24-hour-a-day access to have their blues festival.
Chris, you mentioned, just curious, is there such a thing as a level for dog barking in any of the ordinances that you saw?
I haven't come across that specific, but if you get in there on 38-87, that's something that and Charles might shed some light on this from his experience. I haven't found that as far as where it specifically says dogs. I can tell you that in ours, it doesn't set a noise level of, if it basically just says if it's a nuisance. So basically what this does is establishes what that nuisance is. So if that dog is barking and hits those decibel levels, then he is a nuisance. And then we can, I'm not real sure, Charles, what we would do with that dog because I can't really seize it. I mean, that kind of gets into some complicated stuff.
Black
But
dogs are not included in this case.
It does. The dogs are not covered by this ordinance specifically unless, as the chief says, they get to those decibel levels. I will tell you from my experience that dogs tend to be the thing that get under people's skin sometimes.
Yes.
And you can look at state law and something like that, and a dog that's basically barking all the time probably qualifies, and a dog that barks when somebody comes to the door does not.
I would assume that y'all get quite a few calls on barking dogs. So I was just
we
wondering
do,
what
and we've been pretty lucky, knock on wood, that we've been able to work with the owner on most cases and take care of that. And in some cases, it's led into other things, but we haven't had a overabundance of problems that weren't solved through negotiation. And I mean, it kind of gets complicated. We get the initial response of, what am I supposed to do with my dog? Well, I don't have a perfect answer for that, but we've gotten pretty lucky and been able to work through those issues.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 14. First reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance implementing a resident-only permitted parking model for citizens of Commerce living on or nearby Texas A&M University Commerce campus.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a totally new ordinance. We've alluded to it the last few months and kind of talked about it. As you know, we've got a lot of vacant lots on campus, and we've got a lot of narrow streets where people like to park because it's easy, which creates traffic jam. It creates it for emergency services. It creates it for delivery trucks, sanitation. It's an ongoing problem. What we see a lot of times is that one of the streets on here, we'll talk briefly about, is kind of Aldridge. So your initial response is, well, Aldridge is really, really wide. Well, it is when the residents are parking there, or you're visiting the park or anything else. It's not when all of a sudden we go through on a Friday night and we've got 80 or 100 cars parked on both sides, and we get a heart attack call and trying to navigate down some of these narrow streets. So basically what this ordinance does is we don't want to overburden the homeowner and the residents that live in those areas, but we've got to kind of create something that takes care of some of that clutter. So this ordinance allows for these selected streets, and this is expandable as we go through and we see more streets that are more problems. We'll bring it back and add more streets. We can also take streets away, but the city will have dispatch is going to be the ones that control this. We left it in there where there's a fee in there if it ever come to that. At this time, we're not going to be charging a fee. If you live on, since I was using Aldridge, we'll say Aldridge. If you live on one of these streets and you have a home and your driveway is really short and you can only park your car there and your husband needs a place to park, we understand that. So what they would do is we'll put up the no parking signs. They'd come up to the PD once they figure this out and we get the word out. They would register their vehicle that they live on one of these selected streets. We're going to give them a 2x2 sticker. And I really hope they would be in tonight for me to show y'all, but they weren't. But it's a white sticker. It's destructible, so if they try to scratch it off, it'll destroy it. It's a vinyl sticker. It's got the CDC, and it says parking permit, and then it has a number. When they come up to dispatch and register their car, we'll have all their vehicle information, their driver's license number, basically identifying who they are. And if this sticker is on your car and you're parked on one of these no parking streets, it's a free pass because you live there. It's also, we take into accommodations for stuff like funerals, Thanksgiving, holidays, and stuff like that. We also recognize that you're going to have guests over. So when you register, you're going to get 2 of these parking stickers per household, and you're also going to get a little placard that has the same information on it that's going to hang from your rear view window. And what that would mean is if Jamie come over to visit and she was going to stay 2 or 3 days, we give her the one to hang on her window, and that gives her a free pass while she's there. On the back of the sticker, it tells them about, it's good for 48, 72 hours, whatever we set it at. I believe we set it for 72. And then when they leave, they give it back to the homeowner, and they take it with them. If for some reason they were having a funeral or something and they were going to need more, all they have to do is call up, and then we're going to give them a pass. It's a way to take that 40 or 50 cars that are blocking these small streets and reduce it down to 4 or 5 that we can safely navigate without overburdening that homeowner. Anything else? I'll be glad to try to answer it.
Chris, how are we getting the word out to the homeowners in how this is going to work?
So as we start, we're gonna ask for y'all's help as well. When you see people, as we start putting up these signs, we start getting a lot of phone calls. We're going to start addressing these and try to go. There's only 5 streets on here right now. We're going to do our best to get a mail out and send them a letter, letting them know what's going on. And then anybody we miss, we're kind of prepared for. If they get a parking ticket, we'll address it at that time, because we'll work through all that. But we're going to try to get everybody's address and get it mailed out to them of here's what's happening. We're also, once y'all pass it, this is a first reading, so then we'll get the second reading. Once it goes into effect, if y'all choose to move that direction, we're not going to immediately, we're going to try to get the signs up as soon as possible. That's going to trigger lots of questions, probably lots of comments. And then we're going to wait 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even 30 days before we start issuing those citations to give people time to, recognize that there's an alternative, that we're not just taking all this away from you and causing you a problem.
One of these is mine, so consider me notified.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is mine. Question.
Yes.
So I live on the corner of Taylor and Aldrich.
Uh-huh.
I decide to have a little group of ladies over to my house. So I just call down and I let you know that there's going to be 10 cars. All right. What's the difference if 2 doors down, which is a rental house, they decide to have a party and they say I have 200 cars coming?
So it's going to be one of those deals that we're gonna kind of weigh that as it's in here that we can deny those permits if we need to. They're going to have to justify to us what that party is. If it's a baby shower, we're probably going to make that exception and let it go. If it's going to be something that's going to cause other issues and lead to other law enforcement problems, we may deny that permit.
Okay.
But we're going to take it on a case by case, and we're not going to exclude anything until we hear them out. And there's always a time and a place for a graduation party or something like that. We get it. We understand it's going to be 2 or 3 hours. We're going to limit that to a time frame, not to exceed, I believe it's 4 hours. No, it's 8 hours in there.
Or we can park on one side of the road.
You can park on one
instead
side.
of both sides.
Our goal is to work with them, and eventually, we don't have the technology now, but it's probably my lack of computer skills where you can do a lot of this online. So if you have like a baby shower and you need 20 cars, you'll be able to log in and print that off, and it'll log it with us. I haven't worked through those technical things yet, but we're getting there.
Say, for instance, a person is going to come in and live on Hunt Street. We're going to have visitors over. It's Friday, 6 o'clock in the evening. Who would they contact?
Dispatch, the on-duty dispatcher will
So
have.
dispatch will have the ability to.
Mhm. Yes.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we pass on the first reading.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Item 15, second reading, discussion and possible action on an ordinance adopting the 5th edition of the Texas State Records Retention Schedule.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading of an ordinance that you all heard last month. What this essentially means is Texas Local Government Code, as well as our Code of Ordinances, requires that the city maintain a records management policy. We have a records management committee, and this group of individuals uses a schedule to maintain and effectively distribute and organize all of the records which are maintained by the city. As I mentioned before to you all, everything that city staff touches when it comes to documentation is considered public property or property of the citizens of commerce. As such, we don't have the right to destroy those records without doing so by a transparent process. Some cities create their own records management retention schedules. Other cities adopt a retention schedule from the Texas State Library's Archives Commission, or TESLAC. Historically, the city has gone with the TESLAC edition of the records management. You last adopted the 4th edition, I believe back in 2016. Since then, they've updated that to a 5th edition, and we are asking council to approve or adopt that 5th edition of the local government records retention schedule. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Is there a motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 16, second reading, discussion and possible action on the adoption of an ordinance regulating scooter and bicycle sharing services within the City of Commerce.
Mayor, Council, this is Howdy Lisenby. last month, we brought you a new ordinance that proposes to regulate the use of ride-sharing bicycles and scooters. This is a phenomenon that has been kind of moving across the nation, in which budding entrepreneurs will buy a fleet of bicycles or scooters, and they come into your town, and they have more technology chops than Chief and I do, and so they have fancy GPS items on these scooters, and you can basically use an app on your phone, and you can rent this scooter and go wherever you want to, and when you're finished, you just leave the scooter there, and the app calculates how much you have to pay, and you pay your fee, and off you go. But the scooter or the bicycle gets left wherever you stop. And so cities have begun to find that these can become a nuisance, and they can become a public safety issue if the scooters and bicycles are left all over the street and on the sidewalks. And we don't currently have anything in our code of ordinances that would regulate this type of vehicle use. And so last month, y'all passed on first reading this ordinance to put in place some regulations. We didn't plagiarize. We just were effectively using other people's public resources and took ordinances that other cities have done, kind of adjusted them to make them our own. And so we're presenting this to you and recommending approval on second reading. We have been contacted by one such business that's interested in bringing scooters both to downtown Commerce and on the university campus. And if they show up before we have any regulations in place, it could create some confusion. And so we're recommending and asking for approval of this ordinance on second reading.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
I move that we pass this ordinance on second reading.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 17, second reading. Discussion and possible action on an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Commerce, Texas, amending Chapter 2, Administration, and adding Article 6, Ethics, and adopting general standards of ethics, conflicts of interest and related disclosures, gifts and honorariums, adopting related definitions and associated interpretations of such items, ethics training, and adoption of policy for elected and appointed officials for the City of Commerce.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is also a second reading ordinance that you all heard last month. If you recall, we discussed the fact that a majority of cities have incorporated into their charter an ethics section, which essentially commits elected officials, appointed officials, and sometimes city employees to foster an environment of integrity, essentially. The City of Commerce, by practice, has adopted a resolution, I believe last in July of 2015, which mandated that elected officials and those appointed to city boards and commissions would adhere to those ethics policies. But it's never been something that we've codified in our code of ordinances, which is what most cities typically do. So what we worked on to kind of coincide with the council's wishes to update all of our ordinances, we worked on an ethics policy and brought this to you last month. And what we gathered from conversations with the council is that you all wanted to incorporate this ethics policy into our code of ordinances, but you wanted to allow the city manager to retain the right to manage city employees when it comes to things like ethics. So the main change you will see, it's a 12-page policy, but as you're looking through it, the main changes you'll see that Charles and myself made is we removed any portion in the ordinance that was related to employees. And we just left it at city-appointed officials and city-elected officials. Going through this, I want to make sure I don't miss any other changes that we made. I think at the very end, the only other thing we added is that there are several laws in local government code that you all abide by, and that was a part of the ethics policy, the original one that I really liked, so we incorporated it in this one as well. And then we just added a section related to allowing the city manager to retain that control over city employees when it comes to ethics, and so we added that in section 2.10. So we are happy to take any questions if you have them.
And I will add for the record that we're not proposing that employees are unethical because we removed them from this process. It's just, it's a little bit more complicated when you start getting into Fair Labor Standards and some of the issues we talked about last time. And so, yes, we do and will have a policy about employee and their ethical behavior, but we didn't want to cloud these two documents. So,
Is there a motion?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 18, second reading, consideration and possible action on an ordinance amending Chapter 90, Traffic and Vehicles, subsections 90-101A2 and A3 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Commerce to designate a no parking zone on a portion of the east and west side of Bodark Street between Stonewall and Culver Street, providing a penalty and providing for an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Once again, this is amending Chapter 90. This is going to be Bodark Street from Stonewall Street down to Culver. It's going to be south of the Alumni Center right in there. Currently, what we have in that area is, I hate to use the term spot zoning. It could be well, anyway, over the years, we've got the first block there is no parking on both sides, and the next block is parking on the east side only, and then the next is west side only. It's not uniform, and it creates a lot of trouble knowing exactly where to park and everything else. That street is, we have a large number of cars during school that park on that street. They block driveways and everything else. Right beside that street, you've got lot 14 and lot 19 that are completely vacant and grass is growing up in them because they just choose to park on the street and block driveways. As that happens, we have a lot of very upset homeowners that get ready to leave and they can't leave. That street, when they do that, it makes it hard for us to get up and down it. It makes it hard for homeowners to get out. It makes it hard when they're running up their grass and all that kind of stuff. This cleans up that street and makes it no parking on both sides all the way down it. It makes it really easy to tell what's what. And it also forces that majority of those cars back into those parking lots and gets them off our streets and cleans them up. Any other questions? I'd be glad to answer them.
Is there a motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 19, City Manager's Report.
Forgot my notes today.
Okay, so we're going to start with property tax revenue. We have received our property tax revenue for April 2021. As of the end of April, we have received almost 2.3 million in property tax revenue, which puts us about 94% of our tax levy. Last year at this time, we were right at 95, so we're very close to where we were last year. So hopefully we'll surpass that 97% collection rate again. On your sales tax, so you will see a large spike in May. This was an unexpected spike, okay? I will say that I've done some analysis, and we'll get to that in 1 second, but a lot of it has to do with, if you remember, if we're in May, this is revenue and purchases that were done in March. So you have the second, is it the third or second stimulus? I don't know which one. We have the stimulus payments that came out, and then you also have refunds that were coming out. And so,
and you had Snowvid.
And we had Snowvid. And so what we're seeing is that more people are spending their hard-earned dollars here in Commerce. And so if we go to the analysis, the first one you have is for April. I got incredibly lucky, and the state returned my confidential report for May also, so you're going to get 2 months. It's very exciting. Everybody calm down. So, in April, retail trade again was on the on the incline like it has been. And then if we look at our retail breakdown for April, again on the top left, this is how your retail is broken down by categories. Our major one is going to be our department stores.
Hardware stores.
Stores. And then when you look at our retail trade over month per year over the last 4 years, you can kind of see the trend of where we've been every month for the last 3-4 years. And then, of course, online sales in April, we did see a slight dip, but it's still higher than it has been. And then in May, you see that our retail trade had a huge spike. But not just our retail trade. We also see that spike in utilities, which is, I've been waiting for it, kind of waiting for it to happen. And especially on the gas side, I saw a lot more tax revenue, sales revenue come in from gas providers than I did electric, which I thought was kind of interesting. Probably because we had no electricity. But, and then again, you have your retail trade breakdown for May, and then a continuation of your month over year. And then again, our online sales jumped up because everybody bought everything that they could online when they got their stimulus payment. So, anybody have any questions so far or at all? No? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have several upcoming events. This Friday, the Northeast Texas Children's Museum and State Farm Insurance will be honoring 2 individuals, Dixie Turman and Bob, for their support of the Children's Museum and their contribution to the new fire truck exhibit. Becky would do a much better job, I believe, of explaining this than I could.
You're doing great.
Okay, so I believe it is this Friday from 11 to 12, and it is open to the public, I hope, since I just announced it.
Yes, it is.
So we hope everyone can attend that. I know our fire department and city manager will be there. And then I'll probably turn this one as well over to Chief Bassham, but I believe that our animal shelter has partnered with MUBS to do some fundraising for our animal shelter.
I was gonna say that this might be better answered by Becky as well, but basically, Chelsea and Sarah are gonna have a adoption event that day. They're at Mugs. I believe they're gonna have some drinks and some good things, and they're gonna be giving away some gift baskets. Last year COVID was kinda hard on the animal shelter. They didn't get to do any events. Our numbers are down and they're pretty good, but Chelsea really enjoys her animals, and so does Sarah, and they're excited about this event and getting it out and getting some animals great new home, at the same time enjoying some fellowship and meeting some new people. So if anybody wants to come, we'd be really glad to have you come out that day. It's gonna be the 5th, 8 to 2.
And that's a Saturday, so you can swing by the farmer's market, and then you can pick up a dog on your way home. And some coffee.
Everybody's shopping day.
That's right.
Or a cat. We don't discriminate. And then, I'll turn this one over to Becky as well, but I believe Commerceville Angels on that following Saturday, is doing a fundraiser, benefiting Commerceville Angels.
Yes. Last year, of course, we didn't have anything because of COVID. The 2 previous years, we had a fish fry. We've decided to go with using local barbecue, not just barbecue that will be doing our barbecue. It'll be a complete meal. We thought it is much easier for any leftovers. If the weather is bad, it's much easier to move indoors for this. So we will have a live band. We will have a band there that will be playing, and I think everyone, and hopefully everyone, is ready to get out, get outside, and keep your fingers crossed that the weather's going to be great. And this is all to help support Commerceville Angels.
There's 2 Saturdays in a row in June. Then moving on to a Saturday in July. I know Howdy's been working really hard and is super proud to partner with the Chamber of Commerce in hosting their fireworks event this year. Last year we were able to host it, but if you remember, there were mask mandates and stay in your car and don't stand too close to anybody.
Well, we're looking at this to be an opportunity on several levels in partnership with the chamber, but really is an opportunity to allow the community to just kind of get out and stretch their legs and do something together again. And so we felt it was very important that we have this event and not let COVID shut it down. One of the other things that we're going to be doing is we're working out the details right now, but I don't believe it's premature to announce and advertise that there will be a softball game in which the fire department will be competing against the police department for bragging rights there at the field. And it's my understanding that they have already taken up the challenge and have begun to practice. And we've denied multiple workers' comp claims because they're practicing off the clock and not in their official capacity. But I think it's going to be a fun time for the community to get out, watch the firemen and the policemen play softball against each other, have a good fireworks show, just get out, celebrate, and enjoy our great country. And so we're looking forward to that event.
We
No,
haven't set the time.
we don't know yet.
But I will tell you, I don't know how athletic it's going to be, but it'll be a great comedy show.
Yeah.
So we'll bring back more details to you all on that at the June council meeting. We just wanted to go ahead and give you all a heads up that that was forthcoming. The city's still spraying for mosquitoes. I did have, we shared this to Facebook, and a helpful resident pointed out, you guys are spraying on Memorial Day? We are not. So, one change that was made to this calendar, is on Memorial Day, we'll skip that week and get back to spraying Section A on June 14th. This calendar is also available to the public on our commercetx.org website. There's a convenient little button that says mosquito spraying schedule that citizens can go to see the map of where their area, what area they fall in, and when the dates are for spraying in that area. One last thing we wanted to talk about with you all is the biannual appointments by the city council to city boards and commissions takes place again in June. We have several recently vacated positions that we wanted to bring to your attention. We appreciate the expertise and the tenure that a lot of board members bring, and we count and rely on the council to recruit qualified individuals to serve in these capacities, and help you all by bringing you all good information and helping you make more informed decisions. So currently we have a vacancy on the Animal Shelter Advisory Board. If you recall, that board, we amended the ordinance that establishes what positions make up that board, and we removed the role of a peace officer on that board, I believe back in November of 2020, and we added an additional resident to serve in that capacity. That vacancy still remains on that board since November. Granted, that board has not been terribly active since COVID, but we're looking to get that back up and running, so we'd like to fill that vacancy. Another ordinance that the council amended about a year ago was the Beautification Commission. That is a board that was formerly made up of 5 individuals. It's now made up of 8. One of those, we had 2 vacancies that have just yet to be filled since that ordinance was amended. We had an additional vacancy that was created when Mr. Reel was elected to city council and had to vacate his position on that board. So you officially get to pick at least one person to fill. So we're still looking to fill 3 vacancies there. We have one alternate position both on the Board of Adjustments and the Building Standards Commission, and then we have one potentially alternate position on the Planning and Zoning Commission. It could be an alternate, it could be a permanent board member, and that position remains on the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's all I have.
Charles, is it a conflict of interest if he appoints his wife to one of these boards?
Well, that's exactly where I was going.
I'll get back to you.
We may need to take that up in executive session.
Just here, we're in sync, man.
Mayor, just a couple other items on a personnel front. I alluded to it earlier. During this last semester, we had Ricky Brown as a young man that's local to Commerce, grew up here, has a strong history in this community, and was in his final semester getting a degree from the university and recreation and sports management. And so we had an opportunity to bring him on as an intern, and he and I worked together. He did all the work with looking at our recreation programs and what are the ways that we could revamp and retool our not just youth sports recreation, but adult recreation, senior recreation. He's an amazing young man with lots of great ideas. And so as the semester ended up, his internship officially ended. About a week before his internship was over, he came to my office and he kind of sheepishly asked if he could ask a stupid question. And I usually say there are no stupid questions, so ask away. And he says, well, next week I'm officially not an intern anymore. So what happens to me? And so I told Ricky, I said, you've got one of two choices. One, I'm going to offer you a job and you accept it. And two, I'm going to offer you a job and you turn it down. The choice is yours. And so he accepted, and he is formally a full-time employee with benefits of our team. And we're really enjoying working with Ricky and looking forward to the value he brings to our community. And so in terms of project updates, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but there's not anything that's really changed since last month. When you're in design for projects, sometimes that is a painstakingly slow process. But you know, we've talked about the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. There's a pump station there. We're having to rehab all 3 of the pumps at that plant. All the design has been finished. We're ready to bid out construction. We're just waiting on the state of Texas to say, looks good, go bid it. The gentleman that was assigned our project has been out on paternity leave. We're hoping that he's back in the office and that we can get that project rolling. Most everything else is still wrapping up design, but everything's moving along well, and be happy to field any questions that you may have.
If there are no questions, there is a need for an executive session. We will meet under the portion of the law 551.074 for 2 items. Is there a motion related to going into executive session?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries at exact